Hello to you wonderful humans and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Wheel of Time season 1, because there's only one season so far, episode 5, Blood Calls Blood. So for those that are new here, I watched the episode and I sit down and I write notes about what I'm thinking at the time. And I do the same thing when I read the books, which hopefully next week I'll be able to do some videos on the books and actually get stuck back into reading them. But anyway, today I've gone about it in a slightly different way. I ended up watching this episode and I mean, wow, it was an incredible episode and left me, I watched it, I sat there for like 10 minutes just staring at a blank screen. But then I had to get up and it took me, like I had to go and do other things, work, study, all that kind of stuff. Had to go do all that and it actually took me a couple of days before I sat down and wrote the notes. So I watched it a second time and wrote after every scene. So it's not my preferred way of doing this, but it's the way that I've done it this time. Let me know if you like it being in more logical order. I don't know that it suits my experience of the show after watching it, but that's what I've done this time. So I've sort of gone at the end of every scene or in the middle of a scene, I've started talking about things that have impacted me. I don't talk about every scene and I don't talk about everything, but just the things that I really enjoy or wanted to comment on or had something worth commenting on. But I'll get stuck into it. Blood Calls Blood is the episode. And yeah, really amazing episode. I'm loving the show. I'm loving seeing it come to life. I'm loving so many things about it. But going into my notes, the cold open for this episode offered a really great follow-up to the final scene from the last episode. So it's dealing, this is where they're burying the dead from the battle. So it's dealing with more than just great events, like the big events that happen, but also the lived reality of grief in the aftermath of the battle. I just thought it was a powerful scene to include, and I mean the imagery in it was just spectacular. The way that they buried them in the circle and then the light and all of it, it was just spectacular for many reasons. But Peter Franzen, I've looked up some of the actors' names, but Peter Franzen as Stepan is offering a whole change in his character and his demeanor, from that easy, jovial person prior to Krene's death to someone who just looks absolutely defeated. And I think he's done just brilliantly in his 2-episode arc. He's just done such an incredible job of first making me care about him. I really, really enjoyed him as a character. And then going through and seeing what happens to him in this episode and seeing how broken he is. I think it's this whole relationship between Krene and Stepan and what has happened is offering something really, really valuable for the viewers, and really, really important to raise stakes for characters going into the future and to raise a couple of questions about the Aes Sedai water bond, and what the future looks for characters because of that. So I think that's all really great. And what I really liked on top of all that is if we weren't sure how the death of a bonded Aes Sedai would affect her water before now, we really do know what that looks like now, and it has some real interesting ramifications going forward, which I'm really interested to see how that will play out in the books and in the TV series. For me, though, it's the little moments in all of the episode, but in this scene, the little moments that stand out, Lan's hand on Stepan's back, and the meaningful glance between Lan and Moraine, even the simple gesture. There was this little moment where it went to Leandrin And that simple gesture of her standing there so strongly and closing her eyes, just sort of that whole, like she would, it was just a really, really lovely moment. It was straight after Moraine offered the blessing. And I just think that was there was so many little powerful moments that tell us things about each of the characters and about the relationships that can be read into in different ways. Even Leandrin's, I think, tells me some things about her as a character that I will be interested to see if that continues what I think. Anyway, I actually do come back to her again. So it's a beautiful ritual just in general that honors Corene in a special way. But what I love is the equal care given for the dead of the attackers. It makes, like, they buried them so lovingly, all of them. And I know one of them was the king, and so he did deserve that same burial, I suppose. But they all got it because that's what they do. It makes the Aes Sedai and the Warders stand out as the good in the world. I know that that's more nuanced than that, but they stand out, especially in comparison to what happens later with the White Cloaks. They definitely stand out compared to the behaviour we see from others, the White Cloaks. And so that's the opening scene. I just thought it was absolutely spectacular. My next note is to do with the opening credits again, and I love it. I commented on it when we first saw it in episode 2. But what I really want is the final tapestry as a print, or even better, as a tapestry, because I think it would look really amazing on one of my walls here, maybe, or over there, or in my room somewhere. I think it would look absolutely amazing as a tapestry or even a print. So I'm looking forward to seeing when they bring something like that out, because I can't imagine they won't. And I know that they could do it as a tapestry type thing, because I've seen it before. If I remember to, I will do it. I'm going to just insert a picture here of what Disney did for Beauty and the Beast. They did a blanket tapestry type thing, and this is what I want to happen with this tapestry. So, you know, if you happen to find something like this, let me know so I can buy it, because I really want it. I think it's a stunning piece of artwork there. I'm surprised so much time has passed. So when it says a month later, but I actually really love that. I don't think it took that long in the books, and that doesn't make sense given what we know about how long it would take them in other situations. Maybe I just skipped that there was, I missed that there was such a big gap in time in the books. I really love that it's given the story that time to breathe, the characters time to grieve, and also they've all had a little bit of a chance to grow as individuals. This will be the first time that these villagers have spent this much time away from each other, is my assumption anyway. Rand maybe is the exception to that. I'm not sure how often they would go into the village. If they got snowed in, they might not go in all the time. But the others would see each other, maybe not daily, but at least every other day, I would add a guess. So it's given them a little bit of a chance to breathe and grow and to, I don't know, just journey on, I suppose. And then we get the Aes Sedai riding into Tarvalon, or towards Tarvalon. They're not there yet. But the sight of Corene's empty horse, and on top of that, Legane collared the way that he was, they're just both devastating images to see, on purpose. Like, they did it on purpose, but it was really well done. I really enjoyed seeing, especially that horse, the way that they did that, the way that what it symbolized, and all of those kind of things. I thought it was beautiful. But on top of that, Legane and Steppen have that thing in common where they've just both lost their vitality. They are different people to who they were in the last episode, and it's just the similarities are astounding. And I thought that, not surprising, I suppose. It's just really, really lovely. It's not lovely. I'm struggling to find the right words to describe it, but it was just one of those really moving images, I suppose. Now, if you needed a sign that Matt had changed during this, look no further than him yelling at a child. It's the perfect contrast, him yelling at the little boy and pushing him away, although maybe he would have been mean to all male children. But it's that perfect contrast from what happened in the last episode with him befriending that little girl. It's that really great example of how much he has changed in that month period. I also really love the visual contrast of Rand, who's clean, somewhat unrealistically clean, but I don't care. I think it's really important to really highlight how disheveled Matt is looking, that Rand just looks so put together, and I just think it works quite well. He's wearing a really great quality coat, or cloak, I should say, and especially compared to the disheveled vagabond Matt, who appears to be wearing a blanket. And I just think it was a great image just all around again. And then it's that subtle imagery in the sense of that cloak and the way that Rand looks entering Tarvalon. He does look more put together, and I think that's a really interesting thing. I didn't say this at the start of the video, but just watch out if you are watching this for the first time. It will be full of spoilers as I relate it to the books. It would have been in the title, so I'm hoping that you read that. Then there's another subtle hint of Rand's a subtle hint of Rand's identity when he recognizes the mountain, which he could never have seen in his life, or at least in his living memory. So I think that's a really good little subtle reminder, given I've had conversations with a few people now who have been watching the show who haven't read the book, and they are adamant that it has to be one of the girls. And if it's not one of the girls, it's Matt. Rand and Perrin don't even get a look in for being the Dragon Reborn. So I think there's all these nice little subtleties. Every single one of the 5 of them have things happen in this that indicate that that's who they could be. And I think it's nice. A little oddity, I suppose. It's not a complaint. I'm not complaining about it. It's just one of the things that just sat. I remember reading it and thinking, when they entered, anytime Matt and Rand entered something that was bigger, a bigger town, bigger city, they just felt so out of place. And I don't feel the same in this city. They feel too confident in Tarvalon for such small village people. Considering they never would have been somewhere that big, I didn't see that same awe that I was expecting from them. But it's not a complaint, because it's harder to convey that on screen without it just looking idiotic. So I think they went in the right direction. But it was one of those things that I just sort of went, they just feel a little bit too comfortable being and confident being in Tarvalon, just wandering around and eating food off that they're given to them, and just knowing how to get places and all that. I mean, what do you do? It's not something that matters. But I did think that was probably something, I don't know how I would have, there was something in it that I think could have been done slightly different. I do like that even though they skipped Camlin this time round, they still found Tom's innkeeper friend. Although we don't meet the innkeeper friend, so it could be a different character, and we might still meet his Camlin friend at another point in time, given I'm sure Tom has lots of friends all over the place. I do like that we get to explore some of the city as they walk through it. Again, explore. I think that was a really great introduction to Tarvalon. It had a really different feel. I love the contrast of all the stone to the wooden village, or villages that we've seen. We haven't seen that many. And it clearly has a different feel to Shador Logoth, but similarities in design. Some, the stone, the statues, things like that, there were similarities that connect them in a way as both being old. Maybe even both, like there might be more connections there as well, that one, like visually you can look at it and go, Aes Sedai is so bright and light, this is a place of goodness, and Shador Logoth was dark and in evil, and so it's a place of the darkness and all that kind of stuff. So you can see that they're leaning into that visually as well, which I kind of like. I did really like the design for Tarvalon, even though it probably does feel a little clean, but not in a way that doesn't make sense given the Aes Sedai live nearby. So I'm going to assume that the Aes Sedai want Tarvalon to be a really clean place and nice and bright and light and all that kind of stuff, and so they make sure that that happens. It is really huge though, when we get to Moraine taking the time to explain and warn Nynaeve about what to expect in the tower, and also to promise that she will take her to the villagers when Moraine finds them. I think that is a huge thing that, as I may have commented in the last video, maybe, Moraine is taking the time to explain things a lot more. Maybe I didn't comment on it, maybe I wrote it down. She's taking the time to explain things a lot more, specifically to Nynaeve in this case, because I do think she thinks that Nynaeve is the Dragon Reborn, so needs to take that time. But it's so different, it's so refreshing, because it's one of the biggest annoyances I had about Moraine in the books, was how, it was part of her character though, so I actually love it, but it was an annoyance at the same time. So I'm liking that she's giving some information. We're seeing her art at taking what she's saying and twisting it a little bit, and you can't take anything she's saying at face value, and I actually quite like that. So it obviously makes her uncomfortable, Nynaeve uncomfortable, especially the fact that Moraine is able to read her so well, and offers understanding. Well, Moraine is offering Nynaeve understanding about what she's going through and connecting the two of them through past experience. And it's not the judgment Nynaeve is expecting. So it's even making her more uncomfortable, because she thought she knew what she was getting into. She thought she knew how Moraine was going to treat her, and it's not working out that way. And I think that's really interesting. I'm really enjoying how Rosamund Pike was able to convey so much just through her looks in this. Amusement, sorrow, fear, frustration, all of those kind of things in there, especially in regards to Nynaeve's statement that if she's as strong as they tell her she is, maybe they need to fear her. And Moraine's, like, how Rosamund Pike portrayed Moraine's reaction to that was just fantastic. You could see all of this going through her face in like a split second, and that was fantastic. There is a lot of tact being shown by this version of Moraine and how she handles this, which I don't know that book Moraine would have. So again, I think this is an improvement, especially for the visual medium, especially given Nynaeve being a potential Dragon Reborn candidate. I think it all makes more sense this way. So as I said, this is generally because, from what I can tell anyway, generally because Nynaeve could be the Dragon Reborn, so she's stepping really carefully, and also partially because they've all worked out that she's quite volatile. Nynaeve is quite volatile, and they're not wanting to upset an untrained, volatile woman who has no control over her gift at this point in time. So there's a few things going on there, I think, and I think it's done. It's a great inclusion in the episode. Zoe Robbins, what a gift she is to the show. I could not imagine someone better cast. I can't gush enough about her. I think she is incredible. She is exactly portraying Nynaeve as I would have imagined. Maybe not looking exactly, but that's not what I'm judging any of the characters on. Their looks, it doesn't bother me. What Zoe is able to capture in Nynaeve is exactly her her life, who she is, what makes her Nynaeve. And on top of that, in this scene, she's capturing that uncertainty that she has, but also that bluster and trying to bluff her way through it, and not wanting anyone to see her feeling weak. But that uncertainty in particular about how her life that was mapped out for her, maybe not by her choice either. It was mapped out. She was raised by the village wisdom. She was going to be the village wisdom, and that was her life. And now that is no longer her life, and she's not sure what her life looks like anymore, and she's lost control of it, and that doesn't sit right with her, and you can see it. And she doesn't have to say it to actually be able to see that that's what's going on, and I think it's fantastic. She is an incredible actor, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her. Gwen has a real lightness about her when she's with the Tinkers, more like the carefree Gwen from the book. And I think this was interesting as well, because I sort of went, that's the Gwen from the book in this scene. And I think she's doing a great job. Madeline, that's her name. She's the one name I didn't look up. But she's Australian and I love her. I've seen her in other things and she's fantastic. But Gwen, I think, is probably the character out of all of them with the most noticeable change for me, anyway, reading it. Especially given she just felt like this carefree. I think the way I've described it in the past, she was just off on her own little adventure. The hero in her own journey kind of thing. And I felt that we got a little bit of that sense of what a Gwen was like before we met her at the Women's Circle initiation, and all of that, when she was a bit more carefree before the Trolloc attack. So we see a little bit of that. It acts as a really nice contrast to what comes later in the episode, and helps demonstrate how good and healing the time with the Tinkers has been for both of them. I was incredibly worried about Isla in this scene, standing up to Eamon Valda. I absolutely love her character. I love her warmth and her strength and everything about Isla. I think she's incredible. I'd actually just watch a whole TV series about her. Maybe it might not. A whole episode about her. I think that would be amazing. The Way of the Leaf against the Way of the Light was another little powerful moment that I wasn't expecting. I'd hoped it would work. I knew it wasn't going to, but I'd hoped it would work. The Tinkers are so strong in a completely unexpected way, and it's really, this was a great opportunity to showcase what they were capable of in a non-violent way, and I thought it was really nice. I hadn't expected to see the non-violent approach in action, and thought it was another of those great and important contrasts to both the violence of the White Cloaks and the games of the Aes Sedai. So we've got these three groups in the last couple of episodes, 2 episodes, that we've seen against each other almost. The Aes Sedai, the White Cloaks, and the Tinkers all operate in completely different ways, and all have completely different beliefs, and really do well contrasting each other. And I should have expected to actually see this in action, the Way of the Leaf stuff, given how much time was devoted to it in the last episode, explaining it and demonstrating it through the story that Isla told Perrin. So I think I should have expected it, and I'm really glad they included this little scene, even if it's not what I expected to happen. I really enjoyed it. Now, I was unsure how I felt about Loyal, son of Arryn, son of Hallam. And I love how they've used his full name. If you look at the X-ray, like when you look at the character names and the actors and stuff, I love that they've actually put his full name like that in his character description. He was so different to everyone else. Like, I'll get through I'm explaining it. I was unsure how I felt about him, and he was just so different. His speech patterns particularly, but on reflection, when I went back the second time and as the episode progressed, I realised that this was all done on purpose, and it actually made a lot of sense for Loyal as a character. He's meant to be different, and I knew this. He's meant to be different, and I think the actor Hamed Amishon has so far brilliantly introduced his quirkiness. Wow, started out a little bit unsure just for that first thing, but just by the end of this scene, I was transfixed by him. I'm not exactly sure what I'd pictured in my head for Loyal. I honestly don't know. I don't know that I think if I'm really honest about it, I think when I was reading the books, I imagined Gimli from Lord of the Rings, but as a giant. And that's obviously not what I've gotten here, but I think it's really cool. I don't mind the look. It took me by surprise a little bit, which also tells me a little bit how successful I was at avoiding seeing any hint of what he looked like before this. So nice work to me. I think he's going to grow on me as the episodes progress, just like he has done in the books. I think I've enjoyed him right through, but he's definitely grown on me from chapter to chapter. So I'm assuming the same will happen with the TV show. And then a quote that is very odd. I like oddities. He's just adorable. So by the time that he says that, I was hooked. He's adorable. Everything he says makes me love him more. I just think he's beautiful. And when he's telling Rand that Rand is an ailment and not taking no for an answer, that was great. And the inclusion of the book, The Travels of Jane Farstrider, who I still suspect, I said this in one of my book videos, if you haven't been watching those, I suspect that Jane Farstrider is actually Tam. I don't know for sure. Don't tell me if that's true or not, please. I will find out when I do. But in this, it's suggesting here, what did I write? It's suggesting here that the book might be much older than that if a Gwen talks of being Jane reincarnated. And then it got me thinking, what was Loyal going to say in response to that? Because I think he was going to say something about reincarnation not working that way, and whether that's male to female, which this universe seems to be setting it up so it's different, but maybe they don't know, or that reincarnation doesn't work that quickly depending on the age of the book. So I don't know how the book is. Anyway, that's just some thoughts that I had about what happened there, and maybe what hints it may have given me for what's going on in the book. Anyway, that's something I will get to at some point, I'm sure. I'm absolutely loving all the colours of Tar Valon and the very different feel it has to everywhere else, as I've said before. And the Aes Sedai love a bit of pomp and ceremony. I thought it was really interesting that they moved Loghain into the cage, which they'd obviously, because Loghain had melted or disintegrated his cage originally in the last episode. So they obviously had him collared and on a horse until another cage could be sourced. So they transferred him into it and then had the drums and all this pomp and ceremony that was just seemed very elaborate and very unnecessary, but it was great. It was fantastic, and so what I would expect them to do. The design of the cage, I think, is absolutely awesome. I haven't commented on that at all. I love the attention to detail, things like the seats on the cage platform kind of thing, instead of having them ride horses nearby, because that could cause problems. They need to be in close proximity and all that. So I think that was really cool. I also love that Moraine and Lan skipped the procession. I guess that's partially to keep Nynaeve away from the others, but also Liandrin wouldn't have wanted to share credit, so she would have been happy that they weren't there. The scene where Loghain laughs at Rand in the books was memorable, so I'm really glad that they kept that in. And I love how they've kept it ambiguous as to who he's laughing at and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was a very, very good choice there, how they went about doing that. I hope we do get to see more of Legane in the future. I don't know whether he appears at later. I know that there's glimpses of him at different points, but I'm not sure if he plays any other role. But I did write here that maybe Nynaeve will ungentle him at some point. And that's another reason for her to have seen him gentled in the first place. Because I do have a sneaking suspicion that her healing is going to have a bigger role to play in things. And I think, yeah, I'm not going to say anything more than that. I wouldn't be surprised if something happens there, but I don't see what the point of that is. But who knows? I don't know. I'm making some guesses. I'll be interested to see whether Legane has any more to do in the books and then in the TV series and what they decide to do with that. And then we hear Steppen's story of how he met Corrine, and I just found it heartbreakingly beautiful. The respect, love and friendship was so much more than simply the bond, which we knew, but I just thought that story was such a wonderful little inclusion to explain that there's a process involved. They don't just get given a water. There is a process involved in how they are partnered together. And also that there is such great respect, and it goes beyond respect to true friendship for some of them. And I also like that it's not obvious. It's implied, but it's not obvious to whether they had a sexual relationship or not, whether they were just friends, whether they were more. I don't think it matters. Maybe I missed something in the last episode, but I don't think it matters. And again, I just think that it's a really lovely story, and makes it even sadder because she saved him. And I don't know exactly how it happens, but I believe there's something similar, because I haven't read New Spring yet. There's something similar that happens with Moiraine and Lan in the sense of she bonds him to save him. I have read that somewhere in one of the books, that he wanted to go off and seek his revenge like he has to do or was told to do or whatever. And she bonded him partially to stop him from doing that. So I think that's a really lovely little connection there. It makes Lan and Moraine's grief over their loss even more real, because maybe they see so much in common between them. And anyway, interesting thoughts. The honour guard of warders, both living and the statues, was incredibly moving. It was clear they were all reflecting on the possible reality of losing their own Aes Sedai and adding the ring to the liquid gold. It's a beautiful symbol of rebirth and the sister connection that connects all of the Aes Sedai, or that they all should have anyway, even if I know some of them don't feel that same connection. But drawing on the symbol of the eternal flame, often found at shrines and war memorials around the world, it was heartbreaking, but so appropriate that he did this on his own. And then the brief unspoken grief of both Moiraine and Lan, that really short silent scene between the two of them, who know how dangerous their path is, but also have lost a friend, and fear for Steppen as well. It was just a beautiful reflection on their mortality all around. I thought that whole section, actually all of the bits of Steppen grieving, any scene with Steppen in it was wonderful in its own way. So then going to a Gwen, this was an episode, a scene in the episode that was hard to watch. A Gwen's purification, I suppose, her cleansing. It was a lot to watch, and especially as the White Cloaks were so detached as they were stripping a woman the way that they were. Her braid was removed against her will, and this is probably the first time in the TV show that I sat there and went, that has changed something that I don't know that I like that they've changed. In the book, Gwen removed the braid, removed her braid. She made the choice to wear her hair loose after she had left the village because that was her symbol of freedom. She was loosening her braid and choosing a new life. She was choosing to do that. So it was her braid and her hair became a symbol of the choices that she was making. This in the show has been forced on her, and I'm not against it. I don't want you to think that I'm like sitting there going, this is wrong, I shouldn't have done this. It just sat so uncomfortably with me that Gwen is losing all her will, all her choice, all her free will, because she didn't choose to leave the village. She isn't choosing to undo her braid. She is having these decisions forced on her, and it changes things slightly. Not necessarily for the worse, it just changes it, if that makes sense. And I know there are lots of other changes. This is the first one, other than the Perrin killing his wife thing, still, this is that second sort of thing, I suppose, not the first thing. Those things are just things that change the characters deeply. But it's fine. I actually thought that it was a really interesting choice that I am now even more intrigued. I think this scene, her capture, the way that she was treated, all of this kind of stuff has some potential ramifications for book 2. Assuming they do what they need to do in book 2 with the Ascension. And I'd be really surprised if they don't follow the story in that sense. But I think, I don't think I'm really probably explaining this as well as I would like to. I think they've done something to Gwen's character that I don't think is going to have any bad ramifications, but it's happened, and that's changed some things. And I'll be interested to see how it plays out, whether it does have an impact or not, because this is just another chance. Like she's lost the chance to choose things, which is why when she's captured, spoilers, but when she's captured in the Great Hunt the way that she is, she breaks a little bit because of that. And I think that's really interesting. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about it. I just think it's an interesting choice. I'm not against it. It made me sort of step back and think that's an interesting thing to choose. It changes things, but nothing major. Anyway, enough about that. Child Velda. Abdul Salas is absolutely terrifying in this character, as this character, so cold and detached. He is clearly taking such great pleasure in having captured them, and I don't think I've met this character. I've definitely heard the name. I don't think I've met this character in the books. I don't think. Or if I have, it's only been in passing. So I don't know what goes on with this character. But it's all just like dark friend alarm bells are ringing. Because I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I think it would be more powerful for him not to be a dark friend, but just to be a white cloak who is so sadistic. He's doing such an incredible job. I think he is brilliant. Love what is going on with this character. Hate it at the same time, but think it's fantastic. I love and hate that Perrin's wolf eyes make their first appearance here. Again, I love it, but I hate that he's being tortured the way that he is. I knew that they'd both survive, like that's a given, but wasn't sure exactly how, so was relieved to hear the wolves in the background because then it meant that they were going to be okay. It's a different, more brutal version of their capture with higher stakes than in the books, which works so much better on the screen than if they'd gone the way the books had gone. I think this does make a lot more sense, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the brutality. No, I don't like the brutality, but I think the brutality is, and that coldness and detached from what they're doing, I think is so incredible. It's a great choice for the White Cloaks just all round. So I think what it's done is it's set up the children as a more serious threat right from the beginning, all the more because of the talk of light. Given I still don't see them as much of a threat, I think I'm about to start, I have my fears in the books about what's about to happen, and I might start hating them a lot more than I already dislike them. I think this is a really great way to raise the stakes and put this other key player on the chessboard of the Wheel of Time. I also think it's going a long way to set up that future grudge or focus that the White Cloaks in the books have on Perrin, if that's the way that they go with the TV series, which I'd say that they will. It helps make that more apparent, more real, all that kind of stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm really enjoying the choices that they're making here. I am absolutely loving every interaction that Nynaeve and Liandrin have. Nynaeve feels so much more unsure in this conversation with Liandrin when she's on Liandrin's turf. She's now in the tower and feeling uncertain anyway, so that's carrying through in the conversation. Liandrin is doing a great job of feeding little seeds of distrust towards Moraine and offering just enough of herself to gain some sympathy, but also it will help explain future revelations. But she's doing a really great job of sort of, I don't think anyone would be thinking, I might be wrong. Again, spoilers, I think I've said that enough, but I don't think anyone would suspect, they haven't mentioned the Black Archer yet, so they wouldn't even think that, but I don't think anyone would suspect Leandrin's betrayal. Anyway, Kate Fleetwood, she's incredible. She's doing an incredible job with such a fascinating character, and I am getting so excited to see her future in this in future seasons, particularly the next one. I just think it's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. She's got me excited about Liandrin, who I feel indifferent about in the books. Nynaeve's reunion with Rand and Matt is super sweet. They're both so relieved to see her alive, and she's so happy to find some of her lost villagers. I mean, until she sees how sick Matt is. But the story she tells Rand, I like that on the surface it's about a girl with the will that won't break. So it looks, or it can be taken to be about a Gwen and having this will, and she can't break. And that's important given where she is with the White Cloaks right at that moment. But I also really love that it talks about the bond Nynaeve has with a Gwen. So Nynaeve, in telling this story, downplays her own role in it. I think it sort of highlights not only a Gwen's will, but Nynaeve's ability as well, her love for the villagers, to sit right by her, her connection to them, and also that throwaway line that she's alive, which you can look at and think that Nynaeve is just reassuring Rand that she's probably alive. But I think it could be more certain than reassuring. I think it's not clear to me in the books, but I think it's been said that when you heal someone as an Aes Sedai, you create a bond with them. And I like that it's possible in this story, in the TV show, that Nin's story, that Nynaeve's story is actually the story of her first major healing. Maybe it's a possibility anyway. Holding a Gwen's hand, maybe. She could have done something she was unaware of, a slow trickle or something. And I think that's a possibility. And I like that it's not obvious. Like, it's good that it's not obvious, but it's a possibility. But the focus at the moment is on Gwen and her will and reassuring Rand that Gwen will be okay. So I like that there's more that can be read into that if you choose to. Perrin's confession was incredibly painful. Marcus Rutherford was really he has really impressed me with what he has been able to convey with not a lot of dialogue. The emotions he's been able to get across. I think he has done something really special with Perrin, something that he should be commended for, because he's done a really great job. And Gwen's choice to make sure he hears that he's not at fault, that was just, oh, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. We also see something wonderful when she tricks Volder with her weak little flame fireball. I thought that was really great. And I'm like, oh, Gwen, come on, we know you can do better than that. But while she's working at freeing Perrin with her magic, so she's doing two. This untrained woman is doing two things at the same time, pretty much. To the point, and she's able to think it through. She's smart enough to have a bit of forethought and strategy and all of those kind of things. And I loved seeing it. And then Perrin's wolf eyes are back. But I was thinking that I think it's really quite obvious, even for non-readers, that it is their wolf eyes. And he's got the connection with the wolf. But I wonder whether they also could be mistaken for dragon's eyes. They're not quite what I'd expect dragon's eyes to look like. But maybe if someone's looking for the dragon reborn to have that little bit more of a animalistic kind of thing, then maybe this is the time for Perrin, the first time really that Perrin may be a contender for being the dragon reborn. That's what I'm thinking there. And I mean, who's to say that the dragon didn't have a thing for wolves? Like, for someone who hasn't read the books, that's an entirely possible and plausible thing to have happened. And Gwen, I just thought there was that really, really lovely moment of her grabbing the Aes Sedai rings. Something that means a whole lot more after we see Stepan placing the ring in that molten gold, in the melted gold. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing, potentially, for Gwen's future with the Aes Sedai, aligning herself with them and thinking about their good and what's going to be a good thing for her to do for them. I mean, that's not what she's actually thinking in the moment. She's just like, that's whatever she's thinking. And of course, I also really like that she stabbed Valda, because these girls don't sit back and let the men do all the stabbing. They're capable of stabbing as well. This is the last page of notes that I've got, so I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker because I'm trying to keep this this shorter than, I'm going to try and keep them a bit shorter, or at least under an hour. Okay, I wrote down a quote here. Leandrin said this to Moraine. There's a sense that the world would be better if the world followed the rules. Her rules. And Leanne just summing up Nynaeve perfectly. I don't think I've heard a more succinct, perfect summary of Nynaeve before. Also, almost sounding like she cares about Nynaeve in how she's talking. She's very good at wearing her mask. But maybe she does care and is doing what she's doing because she thinks it will raise up women, particularly her sisters. So that's jumping ahead to what happens later. We get the first mention about the Forsaken, with the statuettes of people that look straight out of nightmares. I mean, I'm assuming that's not what they really look like, highly symbolic, but Stepan's Forsaken statuettes, I thought were pretty cool. And that first little bit of an introduction as to this other evil that's out there. An interesting conversation between Alana and Moraine. It's nice to see her with, I suppose, a friend. Alana's fun with so much joy and life in her. But she's also obviously not a super close friend, which I wonder, does Moraine have any super close friends? even in the books, Varen and Swan don't know everything about what's going on for her. And then what's with the picture she looks at? Is it sending her a message? Is it able to send her a message? Is there something more? I think that'll be really interesting to see whether that is something or whether she just really wanted to look. They wouldn't have her just looking at a random picture. That's got to mean something. I'm curious, after Lan has had that sleeping tea, I'm wondering whether he will in any way, shape or form hold it against Nynaeve that she gave Stepan the sleeping tea. I can't imagine he will, but maybe he will, or maybe he will not pretend to, but over-exaggerate feelings of ill will that she's given Stepan the tea that allowed all the events to happen, allowed Lan to go to sleep and sleep through Stepan's actions. Oh, and that first Stepan's confirmation, in my mind, this is the confirmation that Lan knows that Nynaeve has grown to care for him and he's purposely keeping his distance, but she's also keeping her distance from him as well. It was a nice little, I actually thought that whole conversation between Lan and Stepan was really, really lovely. I didn't see it coming, what was going to happen next. So anyway, Stepan's funeral scene. It was the moment that completely broke me. Every episode's had this moment. Not every episode, episode 2 didn't, but they've all had this moment that's completely broken me in different ways. Watching such a stoic man as Lan allow himself to grieve so publicly, the beating of the chests, all of them, Moiraine's tears as she feels what he is feeling, Nynaeve watching, unable to help and feeling her own grief. She's spent the last month getting to know Stepan. It was all absolutely devastating and beautiful and so needed in a way that I never would have imagined. I think this was a really necessary scene. And I'm pretty sure other people disagree with me on that. This may have been heartbreaking, but it was definitely my favourite scene for the episode. I've had one every episode, and this was my favourite. Daniel Henney has continually shown more and more of Lan and everything that is going on below the surface, and I just think it's incredible. I don't have the words to explain, but I just think that Daniel is doing an incredible job of portraying Lan. I think this scene was beautiful, necessary, and heartbreaking, cathartic in a way. And what they all, Moiraine and Nynaeve, what they would, the actors, what they were doing, Zoe and Rosamund, they were able to portray so much about what was going on in, it was just incredible. I'm not gonna, I thought it was amazing. I thought, I can see that some people, and I did see that there's some complaints about this scene from some people, taking up time that could have been devoted to something else, and we didn't see enough of the villagers in this episode. I thought we saw plenty of the villagers in this episode. We needed to get up to a certain point. Gwen and Perrin aren't in Tarvalon yet, so therefore we needed some other things to be happening, and we couldn't have certain things happening, and this was a really, really great way to not fill in time, but to flesh out the world and the Aes Sedai and the waters and the relationships, and it was just beautiful. I loved it. Anyway, I honestly, as I said at the beginning of this video, I finished watching this episode and stared at the TV for about 10 minutes after the credits had ended, just processing. In my opinion, this whole episode was built up so well, and while maybe focusing so much on Stepan's story meant we saw less of the villagers, we still got awesome moments for all of them, particularly at Gwen and Perrin, who were a little bit missing from the last episode. Not missing, but less focus. It was another fantastic episode all round, and I can't wait to watch the next one, which I'm overdue to watch. I'm filming this on Thursday night, and I still haven't watched last Friday's episode, but I will watch it. I'm actually looking forward to maybe now, or maybe tomorrow. Maybe I'll do back to back. I'll watch episode 6 and episode 7 back to back. Maybe I'll see. Anyway, that is it. Those are my thoughts. Wow, I'm losing my power of speech. That is what I was thinking after and as I watched it for the second time. I hope you enjoyed listening to my ramblings. I'd love to know what you thought. What was your favourite scene? What did you think of Steppen's storyline? And did you feel the same way about about Gwen and her braid, or am I just sort of reading into it in a different way? I just want to know, what do you think? Tell me anything. Tell me how you're going with it. And I'm really looking forward to, by the time we're in the comments, I'll have watched the next episode. So that'll be fine. And maybe even the one after that. So it'll be good. And I will catch you with the next video very, very soon. Okay, bye.